Do you want to do like a introduction, like ladies and gentlemen? You want to do that one?
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peter Feliciano. Come here. My name is Peter Feliciano, and this is Conservatish, episode 105. Hang on, I have to count it out. I had a lot of these backed up. Let's see, I did. Will, my brother, was 101. Then Pollo Del Mar was 102. And then episode 103 was Dave Walsh.
Oh.
You remember Dave Walsh? He was the security guard in my video.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's a sweet boy. I actually put him in my pocket, like a.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
I know. I feed him butterscotches. And then I did episode 104 was Jefferson Berge. 105 was Pomey. And then now I guess you're 106.
I like 106.
106 is a good number.
Okay.
It also, it's like 106 in Park. Do you know what that is, or you're too white? 106 in Park is a show on BET, Black Entertainment Television.
Okay.
And it had musics. It had musical stylings, like similar to rap. You know what rap is?
I've heard of it.
Rap is where...
Okay.
All right, say something into the microphone so I can make
Okay. This is me. Okay.
So we're going to call you something. I don't know, or unless you already know what you want to be called.
No, I don't know.
Okay. We'll come up with your name later.
Okay.
Thank you for coming. Oh, you know what? Everybody make sure you go download my album. And I don't know why that's funny. It's people enjoy it. Spotify, iTunes, and CD Baby for the MP3s. And you can just download things and listen back and enjoy my music. Oh, and share it with your people. And also you can support this podcast and my music at patreon.com/conservatish, or you can just Venmo me money at Peter-Feliciano. And you don't have anything to promote, do you?
No promotions.
When are you coming out with a candy of some kind? Or like you should have a cookie stand.
Not gonna have it, no.
You're not going to have a cookie stand? Here, put the mic a little closer to your mouth.
Okay.
I'm very proud of you. You know that, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is blank, whatever her name is. And, yeah. So I was interested to know, since you're a teacher, so you feel like dyslexia can sometimes be, what were we talking about? Dyslexia can sometimes be overdiagnosed?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like part of it, okay, for me, I feel like part of it is not just that they lost some of that growing up, but also that it's kind of behavioral. Like for me, when I was a kid, I faked a knee injury. I think I had, I can't remember what it was, but I dragged that out for years so I didn't have to do PE because I was just a lazy fat kid and I didn't want to run. So do you feel like it could be part of that? I mean, obviously I'm not saying that denotes bad intentions necessarily, but... Well,
I think how you brought this up is you noticed my reading book over there, Overcoming Dyslexia.
Oh, by the way, we're lying in her bed right now.
Yeah, on my nightstand. And
we're lying on your nightstand?
No, the book's on my nightstand over there.
So this is very theater of the mind. Right?
Yeah, and no, and I don't think that it's overdiagnosed, and I think dyslexia is not, like, I think behaviors happen because kids can't read, and I was just sharing with you, like, our society has only been a writing reading society for like the last 150 years, unless you're rich, but like overall,
or a scientist of some kind.
Yeah, like people weren't reading and writing like the everyday person, and you could have a career and be fine without reading and writing.
Yeah.
But then, like, later 19th century, like schools and people going to school, and all of a sudden they realized, hey, we have these kids that are smart, but they can't read or write, and why is that? And that's like the first studies that started coming up with dyslexia. But with dyslexia, it's like usually kids that think like they want to read and they're excited to learn how to read, and they start school and they're like, awesome. Like
So
you're
they're
talking
not
about.
they're not bad kids like me.
No, like they if you're talking about a kid that's like a I don't like the word normal. What's normal? But like a whatever average kid that's like, yes,
Right.
I'm in school.
Right.
I'm ready to go to school and read, and then all the other kids are starting to read and they're not, and they're like signs, and they're like back to school night, like their work is obviously like totally different than the other kids. And at first they don't notice, just their parents notice. But as they go up in grades, like they're just not getting what the other kids are getting, and
Right.
then it becomes frustration, and then it's like, oh, I'm not going to write because I just fail at this, and so
Right.
why set myself up for failure again? And then the worst I think is when or like where the behaviors really come out, because still in like elementary school, kids they want to do well, and I had a student that his sister and him were dyslexic, and his sister made all this progress, and he saw that and was excited.
Oh, okay. It wasn't discouraging for him.
No, and he's like, okay, cool, this is my turn. And he did tons of work and practiced and went through all the drills, and he went nowhere. And so now he's a 7th grader, and he's like, I'm done. Like I've done. Like it's not going to happen for me. But this kid, like, he's like 12, 13, and he's like learning how to ride motorcycles and is like, all into engines and planes.
Okay,
and so
alright.
it's like there's this other knowledge.
An interest.
Yeah, and so there's total intelligence. It's just the reading and writing that's the block.
So has it started to become like a behavioral problem?
For him, not behavioral, like outward behavior, but like depression for him. Like I'm just like, oh, I'm dumb and I'm never gonna get this. And so that happens. Or in middle school, you get the kids that are just like, oh, I don't want kids to know I'm stupid. That's the worst thing in the world. Is to be dumb. So
Right.
then they're going to be the mean kid or the comedian,
Okay.
or let me have any other attention other than being
Right.
the dumb kid. And then you see the behaviors. And
Do you feel like part of is it? I mean, it is too early, I guess, to start focusing on vocational stuff for that kid. Like, maybe that's not the right word, but like, is it too early to start focus on? You know what? Let's give this kid, build engines to build and whatever, because he still has the hoops to jump through for regular high school.
And then they have a reason to read, because then it's like, okay, I have to read about how this is all put together.
Okay.
And then there's the motivation, and it's not like I'm reading this elementary book that's below me because it has 2-syllable words and it's really boring.
Right. About caterpillars and bullshit.
Caterpillars are cute.
No, kill them all with my face.
But no, that's not early at all. But then you have to look at a school. Does a school have, like, does it have theaters and arts, and does it have like Makers Club, and does it have all these other things that a kid can engage in? So
Makers Club.
Yeah, make like where they get to take apart things and build things, and
and then
they
you
get
can
like
also,
dissect
do you ever
machines.
like recommend their dad or mom brings them to the Makers Fair? You know what I mean? And like does like interesting shit. Like, okay, all right. So there's ways around it.
Yeah, and keeping them motivated in other places. Yeah, and my work's been pretty much just middle school and upper elementary. But then when you get to high school too, of like, okay, well now this is a challenge. How do we make this so it's not a block? So
Right.
you can't do things that you want to do. And there's there's tons of people that are successful and dyslexic, and it's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you always interested in helping kids?
Oh, that's so interesting. I feel like teachers are like, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I didn't have that story, and so I felt like that made me like not as good of a teacher. I knew I always wanted to work with kids. And my sister's dyslexic, and so like that's kind of grown up.
Right.
But then
and she was younger than you, so
yeah,
you
and
felt,
so I would help.
So you
her.
would help her. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like the older one, so I had all little cousins too. Around, and so I wanted to be a teacher, but then when I got to school and I did my student teaching, I hated it. And it just,
what did you hate about it?
It just made me really sad. It was like Bush era, No Child Left Behind. I was in a low performing school, so it was 4 hours of language arts, 2 hours of math. First grade, there was no PE, no art, no science. And it just felt like if you were there was a class, there was like, I don't know, 25 kids, and there's just like worksheets, and there's 2 kids that were really good at doing the worksheets. And if you were like those 2 kids, like cool, all the rest of the kids,
What was bad about No Child Left Behind? Was it the idea of we're going to force you into this style of learning?
That if your school didn't have certain test scores, then they took out the extracurriculars and just focused on language arts and math to get your test scores up. And that way they're like, so we don't want to leave children behind in the test scores, but by taking out all those extracurriculars, the kids that have the learning disabilities or that it's not coming naturally, you take all the joy of learning out.
Right.
And so then kids are just like,
it's worksheets.
School's not for me.
I'm fucking 33. I can't look at worksheets. I fucking hate that shit. My mind starts to glaze over, and I start thinking about my next pizza slice or sex or something. I just jerk off on the page.
Peter.
I can't be like an NPR guy. I have to mix in this interesting stuff about child education with jism. All right, listen. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Why are you tweaking my nipple at the same time? But okay, so you grew up. You were like a little discouraged by that.
Yeah, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then
did that change before you really started learning or teaching? I'm sorry. Did the No Child Left Behind stuff change?
It started while I was in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, did it stop when you were in college? Like
that stopped. I don't know exactly when it stopped. So I got out of. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I wasn't in the classroom for 22 to 28. So I guess 6 years. And I don't know if it ended when Obama came in. I don't know when it ended. But I taught outdoor education. And that's where I found that I love working with kids that were different. I always get either like problem kids or it could be physical handicap or the kids that have more energy.
Right.
I like the challenge.
That's a nice way to say it. More energy.
Yeah.
So was it also, do you feel like you were a bit of a problem child as well?
No, I was like you
were the good girl?
My report cards are always the same of like a great student, polite. I was quiet. I just, wanted to make the teachers happy. I was a good student.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't like these are my people. It was more like
it
was just a challenge thing, or what else was it for you?
And I think seeing the like equity of education, doing outdoor education, those kids that were like quote unquote problem kids, they would like thrive outdoors and they would be your team leaders. And I worked on like a challenge course, and they were the ones that were like helping out all the other kids, or or you'd be down in the stream doing a stream study, or they'd be at the front of the group hiking, like
and those were the ones who in a regular style classroom would not be thriving,
and they're given this place to shine, and then they're like seen as leaders within the group. And I loved seeing that transformation of like their peers viewing them in a different way, or themselves all of a sudden, I'm getting this positive attention.
How often would that be sustained if you could back in on those kids, like when they would go back into they would feel the confidence, they would feel maybe the enthusiasm for learning, and whatever. When they went back into the school environment, would it be sustained, or would you even know?
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't. There's very few schools that we would see them year after year, and they're usually charter schools or private schools, and they come out like multiple grades, and those schools were typically doing a lot of experiential learning, as it was. So that was
money,
ingrained.
You think?
Money, education, philosophy, yeah.
Okay.
Not all the charter schools for money, where it might be just the parents really involved in their education process, but definitely active.
Okay.
Active parents, active adults in their lives.
So when you started doing that stuff, do you feel like that's when your mind started to open up to actual classroom stuff?
Yeah, and then I wanted to, after doing that for 6 years, I wanted to be in the community and be with the kids, because like you said, you couldn't see the change,
right? And
you make these relationships with kids or connect with them for a week, and then they were gone. Right. And like doing that so many times,
right?
I was like, okay, it was time that I wanted my own community, to see like my own students grow and connect with them and the families.
Right. So since it's been I've been doing this, now you see them for a year at a time.
Yeah.
Has it been difficult to see them off and not not get to see them continue?
Oh, what, like,
Because before you only saw them for what, a week?
yeah.
Right? So now you get to see them for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been difficult to detach at that point?
No. After a year, you're like, oh my God. And that's the wonderful thing about teaching is this summer comes and you're like, oh my God, thank God. And over summer, those kids that, oh my gosh, just, yeah, let's just say I had lots of energy or whatever it is.
Right.
All of a sudden you have this fondness for them. And like, come August, you're like, oh yeah, like, they're doing their best. And I think that's wonderful that you have the space.
Right. By June, you were like, get the fuck.
Like, yeah.
Right. So how often do you beat the children? I'm just wondering. I would throw a frisbee accidentally at a child's mouth. Okay, so you have this experience of doing what you're doing. You have this experience of doing what you're doing, and is there, like, for you? Okay, because this is not linear. This is all over the place. But I'm wondering, is there like an end goal for you, or would you want to climb the superintendent ladder and all that shit, or?
I've thought about that. No, I thought I entertained that idea at one point, teaching, and then I saw my principal last year, everything that they had to do.
Right.
And
but
they're
that
just
was also public. Is it the same? Superintendents are only in public.
Yeah, superintendents are only in
all
public.
right.
And principal of public school, it's crazy how, like, they don't get a lunch break. They're just between all the relationships of supporting the teachers, being like kind of the disciplined person. It was just crazy to see everything they had to do. That was like, no, that's too much.
Right.
But yeah, I don't see an end goal. I would like to be in a place where I get to support teachers someday, and that's kind of my role now.
Meaning?
That I'm a learning resource teacher, support teacher, so I get to work one-on-one with students in small groups, and also support teachers with the kids that are having more difficulty in class.
So obviously we won't share which school, but you're in a private school now, and is the whole private school kids who need special, who are special needs, or is it?
That's interesting you say that. They're yes and no.
Okay.
It's like that is part of what it is, but it's also just student-centered small classes. I would say a majority of our students have some sort of learning difference, but it could be dyslexic. It could just be anxiety. It could be OCD, but it's not. But they don't need a diagnosis to go to the school.
How old are they? Or what grade?
Elementary through high school.
Okay. Oh, and so you're overseeing all those kids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're not just first grade or second grade.
No. Okay. Mostly elementary and middle school, but some high school too.
Is it easy to see, or how? I'm sure it's gotten easier, but when you're working with kids who are in first grade, you can start to already see the patterns of the stuff of the later quote unquote diagnoses or whatever. Like, is it getting easier to start? You know what? Let me try implementing this thing that worked with my sixth grader now with this kid and see if it. Let me try this different approach where, like, I'll speak to him like this, or make it about a game, or like try that type of shit.
Yeah, it's easier, and this is the first year that I'm working with the little ones.
They're more fun, right?
They're crazy.
Okay, but the old crazy, and we might get into that. Yeah. Old crazy was like, fucking, cussing and fucking, playing with your phone.
Yeah, no, and it's good crazy. Like the student that I had that was reading his book on animals and wanted to show me that he could slither really fast like a snake and drop to the floor and slither across the classroom, and then another kid's doing it, and I have these kids slithering like snakes, and I just want to laugh. Right. But then there's a teacher in me that's like, oh no, like, you could be snakes at home or on the weekend, but we're students and we need to walk to our backpacks. Right. So it's like, it's the battle between wanting to join them and then remembering I'm a teacher and like, oh, okay, I can't just laugh. And like, right. Yeah.
Is it was it strange, or was it a natural feeling for you to jive into the social aspect of it, because like you were saying, like of like laughing with them and stuff. Some people are much more kids people, and some people are much more like not kids people. So you're much more of a kid people.
Yeah.
Okay. And because sometimes people are not really kids because they're intimidated, and sometimes they're not really kids people because they are like they're just kind of just annoyed or whatever.
It's fun as a teacher. You could get that too.
Meaning,
Like when I'm in the morning and I'm getting ready for class, and I have the kids, I always get there early and they pop in and they want to hang out. Some mornings I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Good to see you. And I'll, talking to some mornings I'm like, hey, I'm doing stuff right now. You got to get out to the playground.
Right.
And I catch myself in that, and I'm like, oh, I need to make, there's a balance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember the beginning of school day. Good Lord. That's so weird. I felt even thinking about it now, dude. Even thinking about it now makes me feel
really
awkward.
Structured recess.
Even thinking about it now, thinking about 6th grade. I remember one day. Where did I go? Lincoln Elementary in Cupertino. I had a science project that I'm pretty sure my parents just did for me. But I did it. I think it was like the planets or something. And I remember just sitting there or standing there with it, and it was like big, and I didn't want to get it crushed or whatever, and just feeling like nervous about, and like it wasn't done, or like it was late, or it was something like that, and just feeling like so much nervousness and sadness about it, like I'm a loser, like
or how is this going to be accepted in class?
Oh my dude, I'm feeling the anxiety.
There's that book.
I'm feeling the depression.
There's that book Wonder.
Do you have napkins?
That Wonder is Bob. It came out a couple years ago.
Is it like everybody poops?
No. It's a kid who has a deformity on his face, and he goes to school for the first time, where he's always been homeschooled. Right. And it's and it.
Oh, there was a TV.
Yeah, I think they made it into a movie.
Right.
And I read that before the school year last year, and I loved it because it reminded me, as a teacher, you're nervous about like, your classes and your lessons. Am I on whatever target? Am I doing this? But you forget the kid has this whole world of like, they're showing up and they have all these anxieties, and that like you're not the center of their world really as a teacher. They have their classmates and what's it like their friendships and all in these different classes, and you're just this kind of moment in the day, in the same way, like it's not all about you. And it was such a good, as a teacher, reading that, remembering that what I'm doing isn't the end all be all important. Like there's lots of pieces to their day that's going on.
Yeah, I had a great teacher. Now, you said only a piece of the day. Is that just because of your job? Because I remember in 6th grade, 5th, 3rd, whatever, we had one teacher all day.
Yeah, a lot of elementaries are like that, but because of my role, I'm just a piece of.
So you float in and out, and you have your
classes.
office or whatever. But it's like, well, okay. Are you enjoying it? Private over?
I love it.
But private over public?
Yeah.
Okay. Now why?
And it's hard because I only worked in public school for a year, so. My experience isn't like there's lots of different public schools.
Sure, but a year's enough, I think.
And you got to hear my stories.
Yeah.
And the school that I was at was, it was low income, like amazing teachers, showing up doing their best, and the kids like. Oh no, they didn't have the programs that the school I have has now. Like for even like supplies. So like supplies, I was told at the beginning of the year in public school, like, oh, you have this amount for your classroom, starting out as a first year teacher here, and great. And I got some supplies, brought the receipts in, and I didn't get reimbursed till the end of November because they had to like do the budget, and I didn't have like ink in my printer, and same thing, they're like, well, like we can order that, but we have to get the budget approved first, and that's not going to take place till October. So I didn't get so there was a printer on campus, but because of my department and stuff, I teach special education, I print out a lot more documents, and so I had a printer in my classroom, and that didn't have ink in it until November. And so just things, and it got to a point where everything was so slow that either I just was like, whatever, I'm not going to go through it to get reimbursed, or you just kind of make do. Where at the school now, I don't have to pay up front for anything. Like I just,
Wow.
and there's, of course there's limits with like, I have to like, I have to get it approved and say, this is how I'm going to use it in the classroom.
Right.
But it's just approved and it shows up on my desk 3 days later.
So, couple of things. Number one, what is, because I'm sure parents who are listening to this are like, we already know this, Pete. But what is the difference between, like, what would those parents need to do to have their kid in a private versus a public?
Ooh.
It's money.
Yeah.
Okay, how much do you think? I'm sure every school is different, but
yeah. And I don't.
You don't even know.
Yeah, I don't know the range. It's because there's Catholic schools, there's public charter schools that are more parent involved, and so it's free. Okay. And they have more.
But you need to have a certain amount of involvement.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like time over money. And it's interesting here in San Francisco. There's so many private schools, and they can be expensive, like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year for like fourth grade. It's kind of nuts. Right. I myself, I went back and forth between public school and Catholic school, and I think when I was in high school, tuition was like $3,000 a year, and I remember it was huge. My parents, like, that was a big deal. Right. And we got funding from my church that paid like half of it. But I remember as a kid being like, I can't mess around because like my parents are paying this money. Right. And with private school, the kids know that too. That like you can't, like, you can get kicked out. Right. Public school, you can't really get kicked out. Right. And not that I don't know, it shouldn't be an ultimatum, but it's different. Right. Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, whatever kind of works, do you feel like there's a faster, maybe you're still kind of too new into it, but do you feel like there's a faster learning in that environment? Or maybe not a faster learning, but the care or that thing hanging over a little bit over the kid's head? A first grader can't wrap his head around, my parents are paying for this, can he? No. So is it then the environment of less stress? Maybe there's less stress coming from you, and so top down, for some reason, energy-wise, there's just more flow. Do you feel like maybe it might be part of that?
That could be part of it, and I also think it depends on.
Put the mic a little bit closer.
On where you're at with school, because like there are wonderful public schools. I'm thinking of, there's some here in the city that are more art based, and that is my kind of preference, to have all the different programs. Right. But then outside of the city, you get more into the suburbs and public schools. Just
kind
the
of
resources. Yeah. I think here in the city we have this like dichotomy of wealthy people send their kids to private schools, and so there's a lot of expensive private schools. Right. And the parent involvement of that was the thing with my other school. Parents might not be as involved as they would like to be, like they want to be, but they're working, multiple jobs, or it's single, or it's single parents, and they don't have the knowledge. And again, as a special ed teacher, what I loved about that was I got to explain, like, hey, here's how we're helping your child, and this is like the supports your child needs. And a lot of time it was
a relief.
Yeah. And it's like this learning disability or difference isn't a bad thing, and getting to explain that. Or you have families that, English isn't their native language. Right. And so then they're not getting read to in English, they're not having that at home. And so the growth, like, there's so many different pieces to pull it apart. Right. And the school I'm at right now, the parents are well informed, and the kids come from a life of abundance, and they have many opportunities. So there is that part of it too.
Have you seen pieces of those kids who have abundant lives? Has there been as much of an acting out? Because I guess the stereotype from what I remember is that, well, these kids are wealthy, so they're going to be, there's like a pressure to, like, put an unwanted pregnancy in the dumpster. You know what I mean? Like, or there's going to be more. That might be the extreme, but but there's like a social pressure or like there's money, so they're spoiled. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so I don't really care. Or my dad's got me, blah blah blah. But it sounds like it's not that way.
It's
In your experience so far,
In my
anyway.
experience so far, and again with the population of students I work with, they go through so much anxiety and frustration with school that when they do come to a school like ours that is small classes, student centered, lots of different, a variety of classes there, and they're not. There's this kind of relief of like, oh, I can be myself.
Right.
And
in a way, possibly that these other kids are weirdos too, in a good way.
yes, exactly. I love it.
Perfect.
Like they're
Perfect.
odd and weird, and all of a sudden they're like at
Right.
school and they're like, oh wait, like there's other odd and weird people here,
Right.
and it's not really that big of a deal.
Right.
And like, what are ways that I can work around these
Right.
anxieties, struggles I have, and also where can I shine?
Right.
Yeah. So it's
That's pretty cute.
Yeah, I really love it.
So, let's talk about some of the other things about private. From what I remember, some of the stories or public is that she just kissed me on the cheek. How dare you? I'm a very professional podcaster. Put my hand on your ass. All right, listen. We're going to hell, ladies and gentlemen. Patreon.com/conservatish. So here's the thing. Private, though, or public, though, the problem, or one of the problems that you faced was not just, oh, these poor parents, they really care. What about what happens when the parent doesn't?
Oh, they don't, and then it's dropping it off at school, and
What do you mean, oh, they don't? Like, it's more often?
well,
No.
no, I don't want to generalize, but I guess I could just speak to my experience.
Right.
I had this amazing mentor, and she when I would tell her about my challenges with behavior, with students coming in, just language being used, and I don't know, attitudes, she would share that like society expects too much of public schools in an inner city low income area, like
Right.
schools
Not just
are
from the
schools
parents, but
like schools are here to educate. We're not here to be social welfare. We're not here to fix all the social emotional problems. We're not counselors. We're not therapists. We're here to educate. But there's so many other of those things going on, that how can you really focus on
Right.
education or academics
Right.
when home life, isn't the best place to be.
Right.
And
But that's also not just because I feel like the overwhelming idea then would be, or from a liberal standpoint would be, these poor kids in public schools are getting shot at. Like, hey, how could I focus on long division when I'm just trying to stay alive? It's like, no, not necessarily. That's the extreme. Sure, that does exist.
Yeah.
But often it's just, if it seems, or correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like in the public system there's just a more, even if you care, you're so stressed out as a parent trying to keep afloat that there's less, okay, we're going to sit down now, even though I just spent 10 hours at work, or 8 hours at work, now we're going to sit down and we're going to slog through this long division, you know what I mean? And then I'm going to also have, because I also have multiple kids, or I have this going on, and I'm worried about them cooking dinner. Like, it's hell in a way. Like, do you feel like, I mean, obviously there's no way to quantify how many people care. What happens when a parent doesn't? And obviously you see it more in the public versus the private, so far anyway, because the private one, they're actually paying and they're involved.
yeah, I think as a teacher, I remind myself that like I'm there doing my best, but it's also not my child, and it's not, because it would be hard. Oh, I'm thinking of a couple different students. Like, you make progress or building this relationship, but then that wouldn't be, that positive relationship they're trying to work on is not reinforced at home, and they're getting these messages that just they're coming back and bringing to school, and
Like what?
just
A positive relationship, not to you, but to education in general.
or just to themselves, like
Okay.
maybe they're just being. It's funny. It's hard for me to say, because I know that this is anonymous, but it just still feels like
Sure.
very private.
Sure.
But I know it's funny.
I
like-
can always cut it out later if you want.
Yeah, like yelling. Like parents just being like, like abusive to their kids.
Okay.
And you might not, it might not be something that you overtly know. It's not something that's a CPS, but you're seeing the way that like they're being spoken to and they're being picked up, and this kind of confidence thing going on, and it's a hard line as a teacher, because that's not my business, that's not my child.
If it's not CPS.
Yeah, if it's not like
Right.
exactly, and then
Right.
and then there's this, yes, okay, now I have to report. So it's not my business, not my child, but at the same time, I am not going to engage in the students in that way of yelling or demanding certain, whatever instructions in the classroom. So what I was running up against is I'm giving my instructions, and I felt like I, with some classes, had to come in as alpha dog.
Right.
Always. And it was just exhausting. And I just didn't want to have to, come in with that energy. Some people can do it.
Is it similar, like, as an example? Because the way I imagine it or envision it when you mentioned that, yeah, let me have some of that. Yeah, girl, let me make that shit. Yeah, girl, give me some of that. Oh, whatever. As if they can't hear. Like, I wonder if she has a breathing apparatus. Nigga, give me that fucking. I'm gonna vape. Hang on. What is that? Cinnamon? This stuff just fell in my mouth. There's like a cinnamon. I feel like a red gum just fell in my mouth. Jesus. Anyway, your thing's broken. You need to get so, because the way I envision it is like almost as if a kid, you're like trying to cultivate this. It's the end of the day. You're like, I think I made some progress. All of a sudden, their parent comes to pick them up, and there's something washes over them, like their energy.
Yes, that's exactly the kid. That's exactly the kid.
Even if it's not like I'm skittish around them, or like I'm depressed around them, or I feel sorry for myself, or I'm angry at them, or something washes over the kid so that they feel like, it's over now, or like no more positive things for the next 12 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh.
And and so that's just a different world dealing with, like, yeah.
So what was one of the, if you want to, we can be vague about it, but what was one of the more annoying points of, like, an example of that?
Can you
so
elaborate?
like, yeah, so I remember you talking about a certain lady, like coming into school, and the mom was wearing.
That's fun. Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to connect this. But yeah, when like you have a parent-teacher conference, and again, I feel it's not my place to judge, but as a teacher, it's my workplace. It's my I'm showing up.
Right, you can quantify when something affects you or affects the work you're trying to cultivate.
Yeah, and you have a parent that's showing up that looks like they're going out for a date on Friday night,
right? And
you're talking about like, hey, their kid's not succeeding in class,
right?
And the kids have to sit down meeting too, and they're trying to like check in with their mom, and the mom's like, oh no, sorry, here's the keys for home, I'm not going to be here tonight, I'm going over to so and so's. And you're like, okay, how far are we going to get with this? Like,
right.
When there's not that support that's
right.
happening, and you're just seeing it, and you're like, okay, how are we now? And that's where it gets into like schools, not this therapist, counseling, all these different pieces to it. Like, what is in a realistic way? How can we help? Yeah, how can we help the student, and at the same time not being a martyr,
right?
And making it a safe place for everyone to learn, for those kids that are showing up and that are ready, that certain students aren't taking all that attention, or making just the class a unsafe emotional place,
right,
to learn. That's what really got me in the end. That was tiring.
Right. When there's pressure around to give more a fuck about Rihanna's new video versus, you know.
Yeah.
At your new school,
Yeah.
at your new school, do they have phones?
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, but they all have to put them in a basket in the morning.
Awesome.
And they have to be off, and it's not even argued over. It's not, and if they're not, then they are given to the office and their parents have to come pick it up, and it's like a known thing. And there's no, like, that's what it is. I was actually super amazed that there wasn't a fight over this in the beginning of the school year. We were trying to do something like that at the public school, but it was this huge thing on that's my property. You can't touch my property.
Wait, kids would say that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Jesus,
like and
just beat them.
And and you and
my hand is bigger than your face.
Yeah. And you can't grab a phone from a kid's hand, or it's just like if they don't get like.
Even if they're watching, what if they're like watching porn or something?
Oh my
like
god, porn! I think you would grab all the rest of the class and you would leave if they refused to turn it over.
Oh wow!
I had kids put on some songs that were kind of ridiculous.
Right.
Full blast in the middle of class and refusing to turn it off, and we would just take the whole class and go to a different classroom.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So what happens to that? The kid naturally changes
call
things.
Home.
Okay.
And then they decide.
And it's the parents.
And it's the parents. Yeah, but then there's no consequences at home. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like part of the? How do we start broaching this subject? I want to go over the top joke right now, but I mean, I know you would get it, and I know people listening to the show would get it. But like, what? Okay, I feel that sometimes the bar is lowered for people unnecessarily, for kids unnecessarily. Meaning, and I talk about this on the show sometimes, but meaning, oh, well, he had a bad childhood. So, I mean, by the time they hit adults, that's a bad example. Let me back up. Hang on. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to talk about the subject of race. I'm trying to talk about the subject of race and how it is handled in some aspects of public school.
Oh. So
it's a big deal for me, being on this podcast and being liberal in some ways, conservative in other ways, and then being half white and half Puerto Rican, with a little bit of black or whatever. It's important for me because I hate identity politics, and I feel like, from the stories I've heard from you and from others, that too often the identity of the kid, instead of changing the way, because I genuinely believe if you grow up in a household with a mom who's alpha dog, and then you come to a school with, I'm not talking about you, but with a tiny little white lady.
Yeah.
With a tiny little white lady who's like, and now, excuse me, Tyrell, please. I said please. Like, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
And rather than change the way we act to the kids, or change the way, I'm not suggesting put black kids in teachers, make sure only black teachers teach black kids, but I'm saying factoring not just learning styles, but consequence styles and discipline styles for each of the kids that may work. It turns into, this should be a one-stop shop for everybody, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
And not just that, but alpha dog for some tiny little white kid would probably be too much, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, how do we change this for each?
And make it a place of learning for everyone. First, I've appreciated the conversations that we've gotten to have over time about education and race and politics, because it all is, education is politics. And
you should put that on a bumper sticker.
And that was one of my things. So at the school in the school I was at, or the district, like, oh gosh, so basically they did all these statistics, and black kids were getting suspended, being put out of class more, like at much higher rates than any other population. And so
Right.
they like, this is a red flag, like what's going on, they're missing out in class time. They want bringing them back in the classroom. So
You said they were missing out on class time and they weren't being brought back into the...
No, they want, so that it's like, how do we fix
Okay,
this? How do we
all right.
stop these especially young black girls were getting suspended, like, and
Right.
and like you said, like it could be like just different ways communicating,
learning, of communicating,
and so it's like you
of
see a behavior
intimidation,
of a young
how
black
imitate-
girl,
right.
how she's saying something, and you're like, oh, that's in a threatening way, you're getting sent to the office, versus like a young white girl that might be saying the same thing, but her tone is different.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, you're differentiating
Right.
now, and
Right.
this girl's getting sent out when they're doing the same thing. So they want
Right.
like, how do we eliminate that? At the same time, there were several young black girls that could have been dyslexic,
Sure.
had a hard time reading.
Sure.
I was there as a reading specialist, had walls up, had masks on, of this learned behavior. I don't want to be the stupid one.
Right.
I'm going to have,
And not just stupid, but I don't want to look like a punk. I don't want to look like a weakling. I
Yeah.
don't want to look like I care. God forbid I look like I care.
And so it's much easier to have up this front and this attitude, and instead of coming back around and bringing them into the class, it was kind of, and this was administration, and I just felt like this was so wrong, that if they didn't want to engage, they didn't have to. And so there was a group of girls
that was the administration
Yeah,
standpoint. That
like-
was the way to get them back in the schools,
because they were, if we tried
was to have
get,
no consequence.
Yeah, and so if the administration was going to try to get them engaged, there would be this really big, really big blow up in class. It would interrupt the whole class, and so to avoid that, it was like, we're just not going to kind of go there. And so there was these girls that would sit in the back of the class, and they'd be on their phones, and you couldn't take their phones because of their personal property, and they'd be watching music videos, and to me that was racist. Like, how can you? Yeah, these girls, like, they need to be able to feel confident and be able to read
Right.
and write, and not have this block and all this perception too,
Right.
of like, I'm not able to do these. Yeah.
Or that the rules don't apply to me.
Yeah.
So here's my first question, because obviously you've heard me rant for hours, you poor thing, about all this white guilt shit. Do you feel like it was more white, and was it just the school, or was it a citywide kind of ordinance?
Citywide
Okay.
goal.
Okay, how do we get these
getting,
kids back in?
back into classes?
But did the directive of let's not give these kids any consequences, did that come from the city or
That
from
came
the
from the school.
Okay.
That came from the school.
Second question, because it could be a mix of both, or it could be one more, or definitely more than the other. Do you feel like that was more white guilt, or let's keep our numbers better so that we're not in trouble?
Oh, that's the second one, and teachers would talk about that.
So it was more, let's get our numbers good,
because then we're not
no child.
suspending.
This
we're
was
not
exactly.
That,
This
it's
was
funny
your.
That you see that,
this
Peter,
was exactly.
That
This
we
was
would
your
talk about that with teachers of
San
like,
Francisco's
if there's
version.
nothing on paper,
Right.
then it doesn't. Then it
Right.
looks like our school is good because we don't have these suspensions.
Exactly.
But we're still not serving the child.
No.
Yeah.
So this was your version of no child left behind. This was, okay, let's let this kid slip under the radar, because otherwise it's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Now, I blame a couple of people. Number one, I blame white guilt. I think white guilt is one of the worst. White liberals in general, cover your ears, dear. White liberals are the fucking problem. And if you want to get mad at me, just know I have fooled around with dudes before. It's not my thing, but I've done little homosexual acts, and I am half Puerto Rican and a little bit of black. I'm only like 40% whitesies. So I have more moral authority than you. You fucking identity politics fucking shithead. Okay, you can take your earmuffs off. So the reality is, white guilt is one of the worst things. It's just one of the worst things because it not only doesn't serve the people. I mean, how do we keep teachers from becoming jaded if that's what happens? Because it sounds like it already kind of made you feel like
It did.
at a loss.
It did, and it's interesting because for me, like how in the beginning you asked what made me want to be a teacher, it's helping kids, and what I really love is the brain and like neurodiversity and like those odd kids of letting them see their strengths.
Which is really cute, by the way. I see that even when you talk about it, you like you get this goofy smile. I like it.
For me, it wasn't the I guess it wasn't the political socioeconomic motivation, and there's some teachers that's their passion.
Really?
Like, and I
What do
and
you
I
mean?
like some of the teachers I worked with were really excellent, passionate. Like they they wouldn't go to a private school because they're there to serve. Like they're there to teach the kids that don't have access to those.
Was it mostly white people?
No.
Okay.
No,
All right.
some, but
Okay.
but not. Oh,
So-
wait a minute. Some.
What do you mean?
I'm thinking back of like the different.
Only because, and I'm not saying they have bad intentions, but I'm saying, I think one of my working theories is that the only people who are super that type of warrior are either white people who feel guilty / that they're a savior, and militant like people of color who, I don't know, maybe they care, but also maybe it's just like it's nice to be around all these sad, like these apologetic white people because it feels powerful.
Peter, that's interesting.
Because it feels good when you're like the token black and you get to sway all of these white people with just like with a look or with raising your hand. I think we should be talking about blah blah blah. All of a sudden, yes, I'm so sorry. I'm so white. I'm so sorry. Like you get to sway all these people, so it's not just powerful. It's also being popular, and it's also a status. I know. Maybe it's not something that you talk about a lot or think about a lot, but
no, it's not, and it's just for me at my new school. I love showing up at work every day. I love the students I work with,
right.
and we have a diverse population, but it's a population with resources.
Right.
So it's still, we have different races, a big LGBT community, like
Right.
friend, like we have that diversity, but it's coming from more abundance resources. So the students are coming from a different place, but it's centered around that individual. I want to. Like I think of like how people say like, oh, we're all special snowflakes. Like I don't want to say like, oh, everyone's an individual like that. Like, yes, we have to get through life. We have to do these certain things. But it is based on this, hey, we all learn a different way. We all have different strengths.
Right.
And that's my passion connection with teaching, is helping kids find that. It's not into the larger...
It's not the socioeconomics.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So do you feel, going back to that question of, oh my, I'm dropping shit. Sorry. Hang on. Do you feel like it's more of a, hello dear. Do you feel like it's more of a, what is that weird look? Stop squeaking all the time. Do you feel like that's a, like when, I'd elaborate if you can on that idea of, do you feel like it's more white guilt, or do you feel like it's let's keep our name off the books? Like how would we combat that? I feel like personally it would kind of be impossible for someone who is white to change that.
I think so too.
It sucks. It's
Yeah.
unfair. But
I
because
felt,
of your identity,
I felt that being, I
Right.
felt that with those girls in there too, where I was like, I don't know, and that was a shitty feeling to feel as a teacher. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be the person to deliver this message because I'm the only reading specialist here. I happen to be a white blonde woman,
Right.
and like showing up liking yoga and hiking, and there wasn't this instant or natural reflection of seeing themselves in me, or and vice versa. Even though like, you know, the humanist, like, you know, we, like, not to be different, but I could see where some of the students are like, oh, who's this white woman coming in, like, you know, teaching
Right.
reading or whatever. And some of the kids, like when I had my small groups, like we had great relationships, and we were totally, and like,
Well,
able
something
to,
shifts the group, the larger the group
and
gets.
that trust is built and everything, but it was challenging, and I kind of agree.
So, but you also had, you also said that you had experiences with, because some white people and some white women can be alpha and like wrangle everybody up because they
Are
have
you
the
saying
personality.
I'm not alpha?
How dirty do you want to get on this podcast? I'm not going to say what I was about to say. But but suffice it to say, how, because there are some people, even if they're not black ladies, who can be like, hey, fucking put your fucking, you know, not exactly that, but put your fucking phone away, or there's going to be motherfucking consequences, and you can feel it from my belly. The energy transfers from my face to your fucking face, and you do what I goddamn say. So number one, that happens from lots of different people, sure. But because I had I've had hard ass white teachers or whatever, but like, or from men. But you also said that those black girls who had their phones would listen more to a black female.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think it's because
that was my mentor teacher, and when she would be there, I was always amazed. And she had lots of teaching experience.
Yeah, do you feel like it was
amazing.
also experience too, or
and I feel like there was this relation too. Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's also,
and she had that "F you" stare down. I still had to practice it,
Right.
but that was like, you're not going to fuck around. This is class time, and it was like, I was like, how do you do that?
Right. So I think part of
She's
that
amazing.
is personality, but also it's not just, oh, I see my, because I hate that shit of like, oh, I saw myself in the Oscar, in the movie, and that's why I knew I could make it. Shut up. There's been black people making it for fucking years.
Yeah.
Scientists and shit. Oh, but there wasn't a black shut the fuck up. It's excuses bullshit. Anyway, but I'm not saying it's not a factor, but if it's the factor, then you're being weak. I just like personal responsibility. I love it. Anyway, not that I, save money or act like an adult, but you know what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, part of it is I see myself, but the biggest part is that a black lady knows how to handle a black lady. Mm-hmm. It's not her identity. It's not the skin color. Oh, that's me, or I relate. It's this chick knows how to talk to a motherfucker, because that's part of black lady culture. Let's be real. Part of black lady culture is they're not afraid of someone catcalling. They're not raised like a bird sometimes, because sometimes, not all the time, white girls can be raised like little birds, and that's okay. We all have our strengths. But a black lady is like fucking ready to go on the fucking street, right? Not afraid to be assertive, right? So that's just culture difference. That's not race. That's culture difference, right? So why can't that be a factor? I'm not saying black teachers only to black kids, but I'm saying, like, let's find a way that we can utilize whatever that shit is. If you're not going to get help from the parents, that sucks. But maybe there's a way. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we get through that? Part of the way is to fucking do away with the white guilt. Do away with the fucking white guilt, because the reason why that was
another thing my mentor would always tell me, which I loved, and she was an amazing an amazing black woman, that she would always say, like, yeah, like, you're not a white savior. Like,
No. Right, because white guilt is white
and,
superiority.
And she was so good at calling bullshit for bullshit. And,
Right.
Yeah.
White guilt is white superiority. These poor black kids can't help themselves. Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck you. I don't feel like just because you had a bad... Lots of people had lots of bad childhoods. Worse off than I did, and I started drinking and using and stealing at a young age, and I was I was a neurotic energy suck, and not just monetarily, but in everything. And it wasn't... Maybe it was because I was more sensitive or whatever. But suffice it to say, I don't blame my childhood for that. And I think ultimately responsibility or teaching them, hey, oh, you had bad shit. That's great. Now pick yourself up by your bootstraps and let's go. And not just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, because that's such an empty way to say it. There is so much love and support out there. Even in, I guarantee, even in a public school in Detroit or whatever, there's one motherfucking teacher who you feel gives a shit, who's in his room, ready to help you with extra shit, who if you went to and said, hey, dude, I know everyone else is at lunch right now, but I don't understand this fucking math equation. You're telling me, get away, kid, you're black. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't fucking... There's at least one fucking... Or 10 teachers in that school who would be like, all right, listen, motherfucker, here's how you do it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, having that be part of more of the culture of a responsibility. If you actually want something different, you got to work. You know what I'm saying? But I think... That's why I think the white guilt / white savior is really killing this thing. That's dangerous. That's scary. That's sad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I don't have the answers.
Neither do
But
I.
it's given me, lots of things to think about.
There's a lot of Asian kids in here. Because diversity doesn't count if it's all Asians. Anyway. How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm a little tired.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a nice little episode.
Yeah. I know. Finally.
Your foot touched my penis.
Peter.
What? Oh, we're not. Oh, we're keeping it on the hush hush. Yeah, so you don't have anything to plug. I have something to plug in along the way. That's a sex joke. Get it? I said I have something to plug. Get it? I was talking about your vagina. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been a very professional episode.
I know. I love it.
See, I told you, I'm a gift to the world. Now imagine this, but also I'm very good at music too. So you should all go listen to my. You came to the show. You enjoyed
I did.
the.
It was wonderful. It was so good.
What's your favorite song? I like asking people.
I love the I think you call it the Me song.
Oh, you like that one best? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I hear that sometimes. I've been hearing a lot of "Mary Ate My Sandwich" recently. As their favorite.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
No.
Wow. What do you mean? You don't have to be so fucking insult. You're like people like that. Fucking
All
people-
of that. What is it?
people
That's
like-
not it. No.
some song about some bitch eating a sandwich. Ow! Stop! Ow! Ladies and gentlemen, I did not touch her vagina. Ladies and gentlemen, go listen to my music. What a self-indulgent prick I am. Go listen to my music and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Hit the button, like the video, or whatever. Leave us a review. Talk about how wonderful and humble I am. And ow, stop. And then you can support this podcast and my musical endeavors at patreon.com/conservatish, or you can Venmo me at Peter-Feliciano. You can follow me on Instagram at Peter_Feliciano. And And I love you all very much. And thank you, anonymous teacher lady, for
Yes.
your very professional wisdom. And yeah, love you too.
Thank you.
You just kissed me on the podcast. Jesus, get it together. Bye, everybody.